Welcome to Live, Let, Thrive, a podcast about the Airbnb life, the share economy, and everything in between. Here are your hosts, Micah and Steve.
Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome back to another exciting episode
Of Live,
Let
Thrive. What is up, Micah man?
I'm chilling, Stevie Stacks. We are back at it. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. And you always say chilling, but I've never seen you chill before. You're always busy hustling.
Hey, if you enjoy hustling, then it's a chill, right?
I like that. I like that. Well, we are back with episode 167 of your favorite Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, Turo, Lyft, short-term rentals, and share economy podcast in the world. And we have a special guest today.
Who we got?
We got a special guest named Rafael Loza coming at you. And let me read you a little excerpt about Rafael Loza, or Rafa, as he's called, I'm sure. Let me see. Where did it go? Here we go. So Rafael, he's been doing short-term rental arbitrages for 4+ years and has built to over 53 units, and currently 23 are live. He works to help his friends and family around him to get started on their own STR journey. And we want to know how the hell he got so many units. And yeah, Rafael, what's up, man?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So where are your units located?
All over Southern California, Orange County. I have some in Fullerton, Santa Ana, Costa Mesa, currently. Those three cities.
Wow. And you got 50 there?
So I actually only have 23 right now. I had 50. Well, no. So I've had 27 up to one point. I've built out 50 because I've built some out for my friends and my families. And then my old business partner, she's got a couple that we've helped her build. And then, putting up some and then taking some down. Over time, it's been a total of 53. But live right now that are operating, 23 of them. That are mine.
That's
Nice.
what's up. And you do only arbitrage, right?
Correct. Yeah, all arbitrage. I do single families and apartment complexes.
Ooh, now we got to touch on that. So most people are with the apartment route. I like that you do the single family. So which one do you like more?
I like, you know what? In terms of return and revenue, single families. But in terms of growing faster and scaling, apartments. For sure.
Okay.
It's easier to scale and grow if you're doing apartment complexes.
Okay. And how many units do you pick up at a time in an apartment complex?
Anywhere from 8 to 12. Yeah, I'll end up doing 8 to 12. It used to be one. Well, when I first started, obviously one and then two. Now I just have I was talking to a landlord a couple of days ago, and he just offered me a 8-unit complex I'm about to take over at the end of the month.
Ooh, good one. So in that 8-unit complex, that's more of a smaller, and he owns the whole thing.
Correct. Yeah. So it's more of like it looks more like a hostel style, but it's all individual little apartments. So if you walk in, it's got a front door, but then it's got one apartment on the left, apartment on the right. You go up the hallway, 2 and 2, upstairs, 2 and 2. So it ends up being a total of 4 front and back. And then in the back of it, he's got a 2-bedroom bungalow that they're rebuilding that I'm going to take over at the end of August as well. So it's a total of 10 units on one lot, but an 8-unit complex total.
That's the power of networking right there. I love it.
It's so right away, I have a question, because you said Southern California, and then all we hear about is like really, really strict regulations on Airbnbs over there. So how do you get around that?
Luckily in 2 of the cities that I was in, they didn't have regulations yet. So Fullerton just passed the regulation right now. So I usually like to get in before the regulation hits, because if you're in, once the regulation hits, then it's pretty much kind of, if you get lucky, you can get grandfathered in, rather than when there's already a regulation, it's a little bit harder. You have to kind of follow the guidelines, get a permit, apply for a license, all of that. So there is a lot of regulations here. You have the city of Anaheim. Obviously, everybody knows Disneyland. They have the biggest regulation possible. They only allowed a total of like 270 something. So I like to go into the cities where they don't have regulations, and Santa Ana doesn't have any. Fullerton didn't until literally, I think, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, if I'm mistaken. And Costa Mesa has had one, and then they removed it. When I was in Fullerton, when we first started, I used to have 17 units there, and it was the Wild West, right? There was no regulation at all. So I can open locations in pretty much wherever there's a regulation. I just very thorough about reading it, understanding it, and knowing what I'm allowed to do, rather than being scared and saying, oh no, I can't operate here because of a regulation. It's more of, what can I do with this regulation? Where can I operate in the city with the regulation? And how can I follow the rules of the regulation?
Now, and that creates that barrier to entry.
Right.
Now, you said something. I'll go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just one thing that stands out is that you search out places that don't have any regulations, whereas Micah, he's like the opposite. He likes to search out places that already do have regulations, right, Micah?
Yeah.
Because you know that.
I was going to touch on that. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead. No, that's what I was saying. That's just it's an opposite approach.
So when you go for the places that don't have regulations, does that hurt you on the single family side? Because most of the time when regulations come down, they end up hitting that single family residential route. Or are you like, hey, you ain't got regulations, I'll go the apartment route? How is it? How are you looking at that?
So it's when where there's no regulation, it doesn't matter what I get. I'll go for whatever I can get. So if it's a single family, I'll do it. I just do it knowing that once the regulation hits, they're going to be the ones being targeted first. So it's basically like, I'm not going to go in my business model, I don't go and get 10 single families because we're looking at 10 different owners. It's just harder, right? Cool. But I can go and get 10 one-bedroom apartments instantly. So I'm not too worried about when the regulation hits if I have a single family residency, because if I do have to shut that one single family residency down for any reason, it's only one. I can pick up my furniture and split it into numerous one-bedroom apartments. So it's the risk is not as high as if it was regulation towards a 20-unit complex where I have to shut down 20 units immediately. Does that make sense?
Got you. I like that. Okay.
And that was, so the next question would be, what is your contingency plan? What do you put in your leases to protect yourself in case some regulations comes down, so you won't be stuck with these leases?
So to be honest, I haven't had anything because I haven't had to deal with it when the ordinance hits up to now. Most of the time I just explain it. For example, with the owner that I'm working with now, he used to actually be, so this gentleman, I had to close down, it was 18 units in Fullerton, and I came down to open some down here. I met this gentleman. He used to be on city council down here in Santa Ana. So he's familiar with everything. So I've talked to him about it. I said, hey, look, I have to close down some units over there. The ordinance is gonna eventually come to us because Santa Ana is pretty much the only city left out here without a regulation. And he's introduced me to the mayor. We've walked my properties. They all love it. So I know that once it hits, it's not like I'm going to get a heads up, but it'll be one of those things where, hey, it's probably coming, prepare for it. And when I talk to him, it's like, okay, look, whatever the deal is, at that point, we're going to have to sit down and talk. If they ban it 100%, then just be aware that odds are I'm going to have to change the business structure to do 30-day or more night minimums, or I'm going to have to end up shortening our leases so I can move elsewhere where I am allowed to operate. And he was okay with that. So there isn't like a special clause contingency on my lease or anything like that I do.
Oh, wow. See, to me, I feel more safer if there is something written down, that's just me. Cause people,
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. The thing is that I'm pretty well versed in terms of being able to, short-term rentals, right, is only 28 days and under. So if a regulation does hit, I know I can structure and pivot my business to do at least 1 month minimums, right? With nurse contracts and some of the business people that I work with who are here for 6 months, some of the insurance companies. So I know I can structure and change that way. I might not make as large a profit that I want to make on those locations, but at least I can shift and get them occupied in the meantime. So where I start looking somewhere else where I'm able to operate. So I don't know if that makes sense as well.
No,
yeah.
You're already ready. You're ready. Say regulations come, we pivot. That's the way to do it.
And that's what we've told our listeners for a long time. It better make sense as a 30-day plus rental before you even think about doing a short-term rental, because if that regulation comes, you better be able to pivot.
100%, man. I was just talking with the guy. He's a newbie. He wanted to get started in short-term rentals, and I've been kind of helping him out along the way. And in his market, it's 30-day minimums. And he's like, I'm going to sign 7 leases. They're ready to go. And I'm like, bro, I was like, do you know how you're going to be able to get 30-day minimum rentals? And he goes, well, I just figured I can contact some nurses and maybe put this on a website what's the travel nurse one? Furnished Finder.
Furnished Finder.
And I'm
yeah.
like, it's not that simple, man. It's not. You're gonna put it on there. I go, what are you gonna do when you get a booking for 30 days now, and then you have a 7-day gap in between there, and then you get another 30-day booking, and then you have like a 3-week gap, and you get a 30-day booking. I go, are you prepared to be able to deal with these situations? And you know, it took me a while to get them to understand that, but you got to be prepared for those things before you jump in and say, oh, this is gonna be easy. I'm just gonna put it on websites for 30-day minimums. It doesn't work that way.
So how do you fill in your gaps?
So no, so that's the thing. I'm none of mine are 30-day minimums.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't have to deal with it. Whenever they go, are you going to open this in like Long Beach? They just changed it to 30-day minimums. And I was about to get some units out there, and I just said, never mind. I just don't want to deal with it. It's not because I can't do it. I'm just more of the easiest road to get to where I want to get to, and I don't have to deal with the problems of having to do that when I know I can operate 5 miles down the road without any issues.
Right.
Man. And you said you had to like shut down 17 units, right? Or 17 or 18,
Yeah.
and then go
Yeah, it was
somewhere
18
else.
units.
Man, so now my question is, how do you bounce back? Like, are you just, hey, I'm gonna just take the furniture from all these units and just go put them in another unit and go? Or how is that bounce back?
You know, dude, that's a great question, because it's one of those things where like it had never happened before, right? Everything was going good. And so we had to close down because of the pandemic, but not because we were affected by the pandemic directly. The owner sold the building, we had to get out. And so it was one of those things when it hit, at that time we had, I think 21. Yeah, 22 at that time. And so I sat down with my business partner. I said, hey, what are we doing from here? Like, what's the goal? Are we going to reopen? Are we shutting down, selling all the furniture, putting it in storage, waiting for the pandemic to end? Luckily, it was towards the end of the pandemic already, right? So this was just in January, 3 months ago. So we actually started moving in February. So I said, you know what? I think things are going to get better. Let's take a gamble, because I'm not going to close down. It's just not going to happen, right? It's our entire business. It's our livelihood. It's what we make money out of. So I basically, I moved all within a 30-day period. And as we were moving, is literally the day I found out I had to go, it was find apartments. And it took me about, I want to say 4 hours of searching, phone calls. I got in contact with this owner here. I called them. I sold them on the idea, right? We do the corporate rentals, the business professionals traveling, the short-term rentals. I met up with them the next morning. And dude, luckily this guy had a 12-unit building that was vacant, that was about to go live, that he just finished building. And up the street, about 2 blocks in downtown Santa Ana, there was a 24-unit loft building, right? Like I'm talking like dead center downtown. And he goes, hey man, you know, I don't know. First thing he says to me is, I don't like the idea of Airbnb. And so obviously as our business structure, it's our job to be able to educate owners and explain to them exactly what our business model is, right? So I came in, I talked to him. I was like, look, before you get into that, let me explain to you what we do. I went into the details of it. And I said, you know what, at the end of the conversation, it was about a 30-minute conversation. I was like, hey man, let me do this. Give me one for 6 months. I'm thinking in the back of my head is I'll put some of my furniture in storage, and I'll keep making phone calls to find other locations. And so we signed a lease that day. And literally within the week of me setting up, I went and I found a bunch of I had 2 moving companies on standby. I went and I picked up some local guys over at the local U-Haul that were willing to help, that have helped me in the past. I called them up. I was like, hey, gather you guys. And I rented up 3 U-Hauls already scheduled. And within the week, the guy goes, hey man, I love the way you're setting up the unit. I love how you've been handling everything. I saw the security systems already coming in. He's like, you want to just take the entire building? And I was like, yes. And so instantly it was like, I called all the guys. I said, hey, we got 8 units by the end of next week. Get ready. And so we just picked up. And so the thing is that I still have furniture sitting in storage because all my units were 2 bedrooms, and all of these new units are all 1 bedrooms. And so I took everything and I said, we started picking and choosing. I said, this is what we want. I want this. I want that. This is going here. And it was transition. It was a very smooth transition, luckily. But it's because I was able I was comfortable enough to start making the phone calls and getting the relationships. And now this gentleman here is the one who's like, he's constant just off. I mean, he bought a duplex up the street. He called me, he goes, it's going to be ready next week. Take it. I'm living in a house that I'm renting off of him. He goes, hey, this is great for you. For short-term rentals, you want it? I walked in and man, I love the house. I was like, I want it for myself. And he's like, take it. He gave me 2 months free rent. He lowered the rent, no pet fee, all because of the communication and the networking and just the way that we carry ourselves with them. And he loves me now. And he's constantly giving me I got this 8-unit building coming up. And then they got another 9-unit building, literally 4 blocks away. The other day I was walking my dog around the building and he shows up with this contractor. He's like, hey, I'm going to close on this one. I was like, is this my next building? he goes, if you want it, it's yours. I was like, all right, we got this. And so that's just the way it happened with him. And moving, it made everything so easy from moving all of those 18 units to, it was pack up the kitchen stuff, drop it off in this kitchen, pack up the bedroom stuff, drop it up in this bedroom. And that's all it was. I mean, it's expensive. Don't get me wrong. Luckily we had a lot in reserve, right? A lot of saved money. So it cost me quite a bit of money to move everything. Not only that, it's the first few units with this one landlord. So, higher deposits. Now I'm able to negotiate really low deposits and a couple months free rent with him anytime I take over units. Sorry, I know that was a long answer, but hopefully
great.
that answers it. Yeah.
No, that was a good answer because I like the fact. So this is what I tell that what you really much said is, man, if you do get shut down, you might have to pay deposits, but at least you already got your furniture. So that's really your biggest startup expense. You just boom, go to another unit, drop this kitchen stuff off to this kitchen. I love it, man. You definitely pivoted. Now you did say something in there that was very interesting. You said you started picking up those units at the end of the pandemic. So how did the pandemic affect the California market? Because I have a few out there in California, and it was bad for me. But
yeah, dude, man, don't get me started. It was bad. So when it first hit, was the worst, right? I did multiple things. So the very first month I went, it was March, right? When it first officially the shutdown happened.
Yeah.
Everything. All my reservations were done. I went down from, I think it was and March is one of my best months, right? It was $70,000 or something like that to $7,000.
Wow.
In terms of reservations, I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to kill all the reserves to keep going. So all I did was, we started making phone calls. We talked to the property managers and we're like, hey, listen, here's what's going on. The shutdown's coming. I don't want to not be able to pay you guys. Is there anything we can do? And we started working things out. With a few of them, a few of the units, we were able to negotiate where they gave us kind of like a small forbearance. So we were paying them a percentage of the rent. And then we would pay back the rest as things got better. And they were cool with that. And we shifted. So I started contacting a lot of the business contacts that we had. I even emailed some of the cities and I offered them I got in contact with the city of Fullerton, one of the girls that lodges all of the city workers. And they were housing some of the firefighters that got COVID who couldn't go back to their families. So we offered them our locations. I think we ended up getting 3 reservations from them. And they stayed because it's 14-day minimum quarantine at that time. So that helped out. I ended up putting all of my units with insurance that, I can't remember the name of it, but it's an insurance company. And then they booked a couple of my spots. And then I know people hate saying that and they say, oh, you don't need to lower rates, but I lowered rates to the point where at least I would break even to hold me over and not pay myself anything and not make a profit. And that was okay with me. It's one of those things where what do I want to do? Am I going to be able to keep this afloat for the next couple of months and see how it goes and at least cover the cost of operating so I can continue the business? Or is it one of those things where no, I want to make profit and I'm going to push as hard as I can and not give anybody a chance to maybe stay here longer term. So I offered longer term discounts. So I ended up getting a lot of long-term reservations, made very, very little profit, broke even a lot of places, and I was able to negotiate rent. So I was able to stay afloat on a lot of those units without any issues at all. Mm. So that was one of the easiest ways to do it. I ended up getting a lot of nurses. I was against the Furnished Finder for a little bit because, not that there's anything wrong with them, but I was against it because you don't make the rates that you are expected to make, especially in the Southern California market. But when the pandemic hit, man, I put all my units on Furnished Finder, and I was able to get quite a bit of bookings through there, through that website as well. And I just shifted to a 30-day plus model. And again, it wasn't the greatest profits. Some of them broke even. Some of them made me $100-$200 profit, but I was able to stay afloat long enough to where it started getting better. I started raising rates a little bit, started making a little bit more money, paid off all operating expenses. I've paid back the debt that I owed to those complexes, and I'm operating again, no issues.
That's awesome, man.
Weather in the storm.
A lot of people would have folded, but you persevered. You found a way, and that's
it was tough,
wow.
Man.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you mentioned a lot of things. One thing is the importance of reserves. Nobody ever talks about having some nice reserves just in case.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm one of those people too. It took me a long time to do it because when I started with the profit first system, right? And I know you guys have talked about it. I've seen you guys post some stuff about it, I think. And and so I started with it, and then one of my friends who does my book, she's like, "Don't do it. I'll help you manage it." So I stopped, and I was like, I kind of changed my mind a little bit, right? So for about a year into it, I was doing it, and then a year later, I was not doing it anymore, and I stopped. And then I got to a point where I wasn't saving anything. It was all sitting in one bank account. I would pay myself. I still only pay myself a salary regardless from the business, but I wasn't putting anything in like my profit account. I wasn't putting anything in my tax account. And I'm like, wait a second. So I went back to it. I said, no, look, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to be able to do the profit first. This is the percentage. This is what's going to be. And so I started making sure that whatever expenses came from that from the operating expense account. So anything above that goes into different accounts. And so it was because of it, I started building an account, And because of the fact that I only pay myself a specific amount every month, it doesn't matter if I make 30 grand in profit, doesn't matter if I make 1 grand in profit, I still only pay myself a specific salary, no matter what. And because of that, my owner's account was growing and growing and growing and growing. My tax account was growing and growing and growing. And look, the short-term rental industry creates very high very high taxable income, right? But you can still write off a lot of stuff and not pay that much because of everything that we do. And so I knew that the money I had sitting in my tax account was probably not going to have to go to the tax guy, because I would have to either relocate or I was going to use it for some type of expense within the company. And so I took all that money in my reserves that I had in all my accounts, and that's what we used to move everything. And luckily it worked out. I mean, I had enough. It was quite a bit of money, man. But it's okay. You know, it saved it. And I know that I looked at it as an initial expense to reopen, right? It's like my initial investment. I'm going to have that money back within the year with all these new 18 units that I opened.
Profit first. I tell everybody that is the way to go, man.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, man.
You'll get your debt paid off. Profit first is the way to go.
Yep.
So you also mentioned the words livelihood. This is your full-time gig right here?
Yeah, it is.
So how were you able to jump into this? Like, well, tell me your origin story. You know, how did you start with one and then just say, yes, I quit your job? How'd you do all that?
Sure. So I've always been kind of an entrepreneur at heart, right? I've had businesses since I was like, I think 17 years old. Whether it was just doing things with my hands or I had a collection agency at one point, it was a bunch of stuff. It got to a point where it wasn't doing very well. So I went and I got a job. And this was 5 years ago, and I was working at a job, and I said, hey, I'm the type of person that I need to look at it and go, this is a stepping stone for me, right? It's just another step in the ladder that I need to overcome to get to where I want to go. And so I got the job. I wasn't happy in the job because I don't like to work. I don't like to be on a schedule type of thing. And so I said, all right, in the meantime, while I'm obviously paying for my way through life and got bills to pay, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And at that point, I was already looking into getting into real estate investing. So I started doing research, and I was going to buy a single family house here it was in Fullerton at the time. It was going for like $480,86 if I'm not mistaken, back in the day, right? And that was expensive 4 years ago. And I ran the numbers. I had done all the listening to the podcast and educating myself and everything. And I'm like, man, I'm only going to make like $300 in profit on this thing if I get it at the right price. And I'm talking like on market. I didn't know about the BRRRR strategy back then, none of that. And so I'm like, I'm going to have to put a lot of money into this. And I think at the time I had like $26,000 or something. And then I was talking to my business partner, and she goes, hey, there's this guy who's driving a Ferrari out in LA. And I'm like, what is he doing? He's got 10 apartments for rent in this one complex doing Airbnb. And I'm like, okay. So I started researching it, and then I came across, you guys know Jay, right? Jay Massey. So I came across his website, and he's talking about short-term rentals, and I'm like, oh, and I start researching it, and I'm like, And at the time, so he's kind of my mentor. At the time, he was doing this thing called the Blueprint. And so I'm like, where he helps people like kind of start off and get started. It's like very basic information. I think he gives it away for free now. Anyway, and so I got it. And I put it on a back burner, right? It just sat on my computer, the portal. And as I was working, doing researching Airbnb. I didn't know Airbnb and short-term rentals were the same thing at the time. To me, it was just Airbnb and like two different things. I mean, they're still kind of different things. But I watched his videos over the next, I want to say 5-6 months. And that was it. I'm like, oh, cool. And I was still working my job, still trying to get into the real estate thing, doing research on wholesaling and the BRRRR strategy. And then my ex at the time, she goes, hey, listen, I'm just going to make a phone call to this apartment complex. And if I get you the appointment, you're going to go over there, look at him and tell him we want to rent it. And I'm like, sure, why not? So she calls this complex. I walk up, and the entire complex is being remodeled, and it's 128 units. And so they've kicked out half the tenants. And I walk in, and so the way our structure used to be is she would call, kind of give them the pitch of the initial, hey, this is what we do. We're short-term rental operators. We do corporate housing. And she did it. I went in, I explained it in detail, and she goes, oh, well, we have a lot of vacancies. We could use one. If you want, we can give you one. I said, that'd be great. And so I came back all excited. I'm like, they said yes. And the next day we went in, we signed a lease. And this was in 2017, November. And so it was time to go. I referenced back all these videos. I said, you know what, let's furnish it. She furnished half of it, and then half of it, we hired a designer to furnish another part of it to kind of give it those finishing touches. And we went live middle of December. This was a 2-bedroom. And man, I kid you not, the rent at that time was $1,900. And within 2 weeks, I think we made like a $1,200 profit on top of the rent, all paid off. And then come January, it was like a $4,000 profit. I'm gonna fast forward the story really fast for you guys, but January was like a $4,000 profit. February was like a $2,000 profit because it's one of the worst months. And at that time, they had finished remodeling some more units, and the lady calls me and she goes, hey, I have 2 more. Do you want them? It's a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom. And I'm like, what am I gonna do here? I said, okay. Oh, and to give you guys even more, in the middle of January, I was so hyped on it that I literally called my boss and I said, hey, I'm quitting at the end of mid-February. I'm giving you guys a month notice. I'm out. I had 1 unit, and I was like, I'm gonna go all in. And so when those 2 units came up, I was like, you know what, I'm doing it. And so we took them, and I had all that money saved. We used that money to furnish the 1-bedroom. I talked to my parents, and I'm like, hey, you guys want to invest with us? They're like, you guys have some money? I'm like, they literally said, we have about 10 grand under the bed. And I'm like, what is it, like under the, like legit, like literally under the mattress? And they're like, yeah. I was like, give me that money. Like, what are you guys doing? Oh, well, we're going to invest it. And so I actually, that unit, I still have it. Well, it's not that specific unit, but I told them so I gave them 33% of the profit because they're my parents. So I offered them higher than I would normally. Dude, it was those 2 units. And with the profit of those 3, I still wasn't paying myself anything. I was paying myself, I think, like $1,200 at that time. I had no job. That's all I was doing. We were surviving off of money and side gigs that I would do, side things like other businesses that I had. And so we saved all that money. We opened 2 more. Fast forward 9 months, I had 14 units live, all from reinvesting the profits, using money from my parents. One of my uncles called me, and then half of it on a credit card. And I had 14 units at that point. When I had those units, a buddy of mine, because I talk about short-term rentals all the time, he got all excited. He started asking questions. He goes, hey, I have 30 grand. I said, hey, look, dude, I won't offer this to anybody, but you're my friend. I've known him since like 7th grade. And I'm like, give me those 30 grand. I'll open 2 units. I'll pay you 33% of profits on those units. Here's the projected numbers. This is how they've done. I showed him everything. And he was like, wow, it's a lot of money. And he's projected to do like those 30 grand. His return's going to be, I think it was like 72 grand in 4 years. And so he was like, how am I going to get that kind of money? And I'm like, well, this is how it's going to go, and explain it to him. So we opened 2 more units that way. And at that point, obviously gave myself a raise. And then I did a loan bank, a working capital loan through ClearBank at the time. And then another one through Cabbage. And then I was operating, the whole business was self-sustaining at that point, right? I was making enough profit to where I didn't really have to loan money anymore, but I didn't like to take money out of the company. Like I was telling you guys, I started doing the profit first thing again. And so, what I did is I talked to a friend of mine, and so she became the girl that became my bookkeeper. She got really hyped on it. She's like, man, she started seeing, like, I was trying to convince her for years. And she got excited seeing my numbers. She started doing my books. We opened a few units for her. And then I said, hey, do you want to open any more units? She got to 4. She's like, I can't. I have a full-time job. She's like, I have 20 grand sitting around. I was like, give me your 20 grand. I'm going to give you 24,000 at the end of the year in 12 months. Took that money, opened 2 more units up, paid her back for 24 grand, 12 months. And that was it, man. After that, I was at that point, I think I was at like 22 units. And then I was literally opening up 2 units every month after that with the profits of the company. And it operated fine for about a year. No issues, no complaints. All the debt was paid off. Most of the debt was paid off. And then COVID hit. And that's kind of where I was at. In the meantime, I was helping her open units and things like that. So I don't know. Go ahead.
One thing I really want to touch on is the 33% of the profit. So you get it up and running for them, and then you start managing it for them too. Is that correct?
I do everything. So it's
Okay.
basically all they do is give me the money.
Giving the
And
money,
it's like, yeah, and that's it.
and they're going to give them 33% of the profit.
Correct.
So for example, if they gave you 10 grand, then I don't know, in a few months you profited what, 20 grand for them, and then you keep 33 or you keep 77% of the profit.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So for example, they gave me, it was $15,000, and I said, hey, those $15,000, this one unit, we'll get it back in honestly 10 months. That was like the projected number at that time, right? From my experience of operating in that same location. And so they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to get that money back. What'll happen is I'm going to give you 33% of any profit out of the unit. And the profit is basically anything after operating expenses for the company. For that one unit, I'm sorry, not for the company, for that one unit. And so, for example, if I profited $900, they would get $1,000. They would get $333, and I would put it into a bank account for them, and then the company would keep the remaining $670 or whatever it is in our account. Does that make sense?
So it sounds like, because how a lot of management companies do it, they'll just take 20% of the gross revenue, correct?
Yeah.
What you're doing is taking a chunk of the profit, a big chunk,
Yes.
77%.
Yeah.
So it kind of works out the same in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the thing is that I can do that, but because I'm doing it on a unit basis, not on the business, it's got to be different, right? I can't offer them a percentage on the company, because even just 10% of the profit, even if I just offer 5% of the business as a whole, I'm going to give them back their money in 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much cash flow we generate. So I said, hey, whatever unit I open with this money, whatever the profit is, you're going to get 33% of that money. And so they were doing so well, man. I paid them back. The 15 grand that we got it back literally in, like, I think it was 12 and a half months. And out of that, they took 33% of it and just sits in a bank account. I pay them out once a year. And that's for the remainder of my life, right? As long as I have these units open. So the projected amount was, it's not like I have it on a.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Where did you learn to do it, to structure it like that?
I just came up with it. It was one of those things where, like, I was gonna do more, but then I was just from talking to investors and like people tell me, dude, don't offer it. You're gonna be paying out a lot of money over time. I'm thinking, I don't care. This is my family. I want them to make money as well. I'm already taking 70% of profit. That's a lot, right? $700 out of it. We're talking just $1,000, right? That's what we're averaging it off of.
Yeah,
so if I take
7%,
so if I take $700 in profit for them just loaning me money, and I'm able to help them make money over time, that's cool with me. I don't really care, as long as the unit's operating. And that was it.
It's kind of like how you consider it. It's just another unit for your company. You're just, like you said, it's a loan and you're paying them back every year, for forever, I guess.
Forever. Yeah. It's literally forever. I mean, those 15 grand are going to come back to them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times over. And I pay them once a year. I think I pay them like, I've already paid them back the 15 grand easy. I think I've paid them like 20 grand at this point over the last 4 years or something like that.
Wow.
So, and it worked out. They're happy with it. They got their money back. I'm still operating. I've made a ton of money off those units, with no complaints, and they're okay with it. I don't do it anymore because, again, it's the company's self-sustaining. Like, I can take my own revenue. But if someone comes to me like a friend who wants to invest, I'd rather just teach them the business for them to go out and do it than me take the money and do it.
Find us some units, man.
See, the
Hey,
cool
you know
part
what's funny?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Say what you say.
I was going to say that I've actually become quite good at finding units. I've had a bunch of the local guys. Like, I just had a guy. So I opened up units in Costa Mesa, and I called them back, and I'm like, hey, I need some more locations. She's like, oh, this guy came in, said that he knew you, that he knew your company, and so we offered him some units here too. Never heard of this guy in my entire life. I have no idea who he was, but he knows me from all my networking and talking about this stuff, that he found out where I was at. He went in, gave my name. They gave him 5 units. And people have been following. Like, everywhere I go, someone follows me and they want to jump in because I've become so good at finding locations. It's kind of weird.
Dude, I just went through that today, man. It was funny.
Did you?
That exact.
Man.
But the guy called me. He was like, hey, man, do you know, he was like, hey, man, I was at this apartment complex. He goes, and I think you're there. And he gave me the apartment complex name. I'm like, yeah, I'm there. And he was like, yeah, man, they denied me. he was like, I didn't want to go and say I knew you, but he was like, man, you mind if we work a deal out and I get some units? And I'm like, yeah. So we did it that
That's
way.
cool.
So yeah, he didn't do the, I know Rafa, by the way. Yes.
Dude, I don't even know who he is. I'm like, I call him like, can you tell me who he is? And she's like, I can. And so I just went in, I found his company, I found who he was and his profile and everything. And I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. I was like, he just happens to know who I am. Whatever. I was like, as long as he operates good, man, because I hate when a bad operator goes into a building and we get in trouble.
That is
So,
true.
yeah.
Now, one thing you said you were using working capital. Now, I'm interested in that. How did that work out for you? What were the terms and how did you have to pay that back?
Sure. So, to be honest, I don't remember how ClearBank or Cabbage worked. Actually, Cabbage, I do remember. So, they'll give you an amount and then you got to pay back a specific amount, no matter how fast you pay it back or how late or at what point you give it back. So, for example, they gave me $20,000 and I had to pay them back within an 18-month period. And it was paying them back a total of, I think, 23 and a half. So they were taking $3,500 no matter what, whether I paid them back next month or whether I took the whole 18 months to pay them back. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Kind of like now I use PayPal Working Capital. Have you guys ever used PayPal Working Capital?
No, but I've been hearing about it. How does that work for you?
Okay, so for example, all your units, like, and everybody listening, and they run short-term rentals, run all your income from Airbnb through PayPal, everything. And then you run it through PayPal and you pay yourself out. Well, you start establishing that history with PayPal, and after 90 days, you can apply for a working capital loan, not a business loan, a working capital loan through PayPal. And they'll take into account all your deposits based on your history of 90 days. How good you've been in standing with the account with them, and then they'll loan you up to. I know a guy who took 160 grand from him. I know another guy who took 110 grand from him. I took 22 grand from him, and they give you. So basically, what they do, okay, so they work two ways to pay them back. The 22 grand that I took, they made me pay back, I think 26. So I was paying them $4,000. But they take a percentage of any deposit that you put into the account. So going forward, if you deposit 10 grand, they're going to take a percentage out of those 10 grand. But you can switch it to where they only make you pay back a specific amount every 90 days. So every 3 months, you only have to pay back, I don't know, I think like $1,200 or something like that, or $800 or whatever it is. So you can extend this thing out, 5-6 years and only still have to pay the $4 grand that they're asking you to pay in terms of the loan cost.
So they pretty much giving you a net 90, right?
Yeah.
So you get a net 90. Now, how much? No, okay. So you said you might owe $1,200 at the end of that 90 days, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's if you.
So,
go ahead.
That varies on the amount that you get.
Okay.
So it'll change on the amount that you get. For example, I don't like to hold debt over my head. It doesn't matter if I pay them back over a year or pay them back in 3 months. If whatever the profit that I make on those 2 units, what I do now, because again, I'm doing very well off with the other units, I take the entire profit and I just throw it back into that loan if I took a loan to open up those units. So that way that loan gets paid off right away. And then now I'm making profit the remainder of my life with it, as long as they're open. So, but with them, I actually had a choice to pay them back in 24 months. But when I realized that they only require a specific amount every 90 days, I was like, I don't have to pay them back in 24 months. So instead of paying them back in 24 months, what I did is I saved that money and I paid them back the minimum for 90 days. I saved all that money. I opened another unit. When I had the money saved, instead of paying back the entire loan, I took it. I opened another unit as I was paying them the very minimum every 90 days. And then once I opened another unit, then I took the profit from those 3 units and I just paid back that one loan really fast. So I paid them back in, I think, 9 months. And it was total of 24 grand. Total 24 grand. It was like 9 months. So it was cool. It worked out.
That's that profit first system, man. I love it. So now, you were talking about you were doing research on BRRRRs or anything like that. Now, have you hopped into the buying side yet?
So, man, right before COVID hit, literally the month before, I was about to close on a plot of land out in Joshua Tree because we were going to do a new construction on a tiny home. And man, it was like literally like I already had the architect out there. I already had the plans for the water meter to get everything done. We needed a pole. I mean, it was a great spot. And then COVID hits. And then I'm like, okay, stop a second. And then I'm like, so I slowed it down. I backed off. And then They sold a lot to someone else. I was so upset. And so I kept doing research. I finally found another lot, dude. I'm about to close on this plot of land. I have the plan, same architect ready to go. And then I have to shut down the 18 units. And I'm like, oh my God, one thing after the other. So I shut down the 18 units. I can no longer use the money to buy the land or to to build the new construction. And so now, finally, because I'm up and running, I've been doing really well for the last 2 months. I'm actually looking to purchase out in Texas or out in the Smoky Mountains or somewhere down here. I'm literally going to get into it now.
Hey, man, you know the hot spots. You said the Smokies and you said Joshua Tree, man. Them the hot spots right there. Yeah, for sure.
I'm kind of glad that I didn't buy because now that I know how very specific markets, my business is now changing from arbitrage and complexes. Now that I'm making enough revenue to purchase, I'm now focused on very specific markets for the vacation rental market. So like the Smokies and JT down here, it's starting to get really packed though. But, I'm going to find very specific markets and purchase in those locations.
I love it, man. I love it. Now, are you doing traditional purchasing? Are you doing BRRRRs? How are you doing it?
Both. So if I can purchase a good one at a good down payment and the numbers make sense to where I know for a fact that I have a really good friend that I made on Clubhouse also. It's funny, we talk every day now, but he's great at running numbers and market data. And so I have him, I analyze the property, then he analyzes it. And if the numbers make sense, I don't mind buying turnkey property as long as it's 100% like in really good shape. But I just went and I looked at a BRRRR property out in Riverside. This was not for short-term rentals, but if I can get a good deal in terms of BRRRR, then I'll 100% jump on that as well.
Gotcha.
What's the name of your company real quick?
Night and Rain Properties.
Night?
So it's it's Night's like KNIGHT.
HT.
And then Rain, REIGN.
Night and Rain?
Yeah.
Night and Rain. How'd you come up with that name?
Me and my ex at that time, we were like, hey, let's come up with a good company name. And one of my dogs' name's Rain, and it's REIGN. And then we were gonna name my other dog Night. She's like, Night and Rain's a cool name, and she came out. She was like the creative one. So I don't know, it's just stuck, and we started going with it, and it stuck. We ran with it. Now my short-term rental side is Nightly Stays, kind of like same thing with the K and I.
The K.
So yeah.
That's a clever name, Nightly Stays.
Yeah. Now I have a question for you. Now you run 23 something units now. What systems do you use to keep those units up and running, and how many hours a week do you work on your business?
Man, on the high end, 6 hours. On the low end, 1. Everything's automated. Everything. The only thing is, right now I'm actually currently onboarding 2 new virtual assistants so that they can do all the messaging as well. So it's gonna put a lot of work on my side to be able to train them properly and get them to the standard that I want them to. But the only thing that I don't 100% automate is pricing. I still go in and I check my pricing at least once a week, and I do it I know that in my market, the days I get the most bookings are Mondays and Tuesdays. So I go in on Wednesday and I check where I'm at, how my prices are, and then I go in again on Sunday and I check how my prices are, so that Monday and Tuesday I can take advantage of all those really good rates.
Oh,
sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you now, where are you hiring your VAs from?
So I got in contact. I have 3 different locations. I got in contact with a really good real estate investor. His name's Steve Rosenberg. You guys have probably heard of him. He's all over BiggerPockets. I talked to his personal virtual assistant, and she was really cool. She's from Mexico. She actually does onboarding for certain people. I just said, hey, look, I'm looking for some virtual assistants. So I'm about to reach out to her. She's going to get me some. I've done virtual staff finder out from the Philippines. And then my buddy, he actually put an ad out on, what's that? Not Upwork, but the other one.
Fiverr,
yeah. And he put a thing out. He interviewed 3 of them. One of them he wasn't going to hire. He was only looking for 2, and he referred her to me. I did the initial interview. I explained to her what I wanted. She has experience with everything that I want, like literally with everything. Airbnb, already communication with other companies. And so I hired her. So I've done all 3 different, just from word of mouth referrals, from Virtual Staff Finder, and then from the Mexico ones. I'm excited about the Mexico ones. So we'll see how they go as well.
Yeah, because we've been like going south on our virtual systems, either Mexico, Argentina.
Yeah.
We've been going that route instead of going all the way across the ocean. So
Yeah.
that's a smart move. Now, I think I drew a blank, but I had something to follow up on that virtual assistant.
How do you structure the pay for a virtual assistant?
That's where I was going. Yeah.
Do you mean like how I pay them, or like
Yeah.
how much I pay them, or what do you mean?
Either way, because like, I mean, people are like, well, what if they answer like only 5 phone calls today? You're going to pay them like 8 hours of work, or how does it work?
Got it. No, I pay them hourly. So I pay them hourly, but I make sure that, so from the beginning, when I first originally hire them, I make sure that they know what their job is going to be, what the task is going to be. I hire them as part-time so I can see that they are starting to understand everything. But I pay them depending on, so the ones from the Philippines, they get paid an hourly rate starting, I think it was, the ongoing rate at the time was $3.50. I pay them that for the first, for the training period. And then after the 90 days, I go up $1. If they're doing like really well with how I want them to go. The ones for the virtual assistants from Mexico, they start at $4.50 to $5.50. They go up $1 as well after the 90-day training period. And then I pay them on the first Friday and the last Friday of every month. And it's just because the way that I do my payouts for anything, if you send me an invoice, it goes to my bookkeeper, she reviews everything, and then she sends me all my payouts on Friday, and that's when all my payouts come out. So every invoice has to be in by Thursday of the first Friday and then Thursday of the last Friday. And so I pay them twice a month through, we use Zoom with PayPal, XOOM.
Oh, yeah,
and that's for the
use them.
Philippines, yeah.
So Zoom you use in Mexico and Philippines.
So no, the Mexico one I haven't hired yet. We're about to onboard them.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know how they're gonna get paid, but most likely the same thing.
Zoom, yeah, I mean, that's how I send money to Mexico.
Oh, cool.
So okay, so you pay them an hourly. So you what do? They do 8-hour shifts, or how does that work?
So when they first start, it's 4-hour shifts. So for the starting period, we train for 1 hour every day on a specific topic. For example, today at 6 o'clock after this, I'm going to start one of them that I just hired. We're gonna do an hour training, and it's on Smart B&B. Tomorrow, it's on like just guest communications, and then the day after is on Trello. The day after is on like Slack. So every day I do one specific thing for the system, and then after that's done, after the hour training, they stay on board, and I just kind of plug them into the communication system. They already have to have experience with communications, right? So they already know how to deal with it. So then I just kind of monitor them from my side, making sure that they're answering all messages. And then as we go along and we run into problems and things, I make them document the problem so that they have a system in place. So they're actually building out my SOPs as well as we go. And so after the first hour, they jump on, and like if a specific, like a very specific issue arises that I'd already have a system in place for, where can't just send them a video, because I do video through Loom as well. So if I can't just send them a video to answer that specific task, then we go into it in detail. We dive into it the moment it happens. And then we create an actual system for it. And now the second time it happens, they just follow that system. They watch the video, follow the system. And it's a continuous loop over the first 90 days. After 90 days, they gotta know all of my properties, like by heart, not by heart, but I mean, they gotta be familiar with my properties, right? I send them videos of all the properties. They have I have a spreadsheet of all the details, whether does it require a key? Does it have a pool? Does the pool require a key? I mean, everything on a line item spreadsheet. So they know how to answer those questions. Where's the trash can? They just go in a spreadsheet, trash can. These are the instructions for the trash can, right? So all of that's already done. And that's the stuff that I train them. This is where most of my time goes into right now, is training the virtual assistants.
And then you get them onto 8-hour shifts, right?
Yeah, after the 90 days. So if they're on it, like let's say they're on point, like within the first 2 months, even within the first 30 days, I'm happy to put them on an 8-hour shift. I just don't like to do so because I need to make sure that they got everything squared away within that first 4-hour shift. So that if I give them more time, I'm gonna start adding things to their plate, right? It's not you're getting 4 hours to hang out anymore. At that point, you're doing more things that you would be doing on a different time. So for example, like reviewing my door footage, instead of when they first start, they just review the people checking in so that they get familiar with it. But when they're on an 8-hour shift, you have to review every single listing, right? Because what if tomorrow the guest brings 5 extra people that weren't there yesterday, right? Things like that. And then when they're on an 8-hour shift, when they're on their downtime, because messages don't come in all the time, when they're on their downtime, I have them go through our SOPs and say, hey, do you know what can be done better here, or is it structured properly, or just kind of clean up the cards, the Trello cards, or the spreadsheet, whatever you want. And I kind of give them the freedom to do so as long as they're doing something along those lines, because most of the times when I offer on the 8-hour shifts, it's at night when I'm sleeping. I just want them to be on point for communication. So as long as they're there in front of the screen for communication, I'm okay with it.
So then you communicate when they're not communicating. Is that how it goes, or what?
When they're when they're not, no. So they have to. One of the requirements is they have to have the communications open on their screen at all times, whether it be their phone or their computer. And so, but they have to have basically Smart B&B open at all times. So when Smart B&B comes in and notification pops in, they got to respond to that. So the standard is you have to respond within 10 minutes of any message, no matter what. So
for 24 hours.
For 24 hours, correct. But so that's the thing, right? Because it's not just one virtual assistant for 24 hours. When I had that's why I'm hiring new ones now, so I can cover the entire day. It was one was working from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Then the other one would come in from 11 to 6, I believe. I don't remember the time. And so they would take over. But it was, you need to be on top of communication at all times. The only time I knew I had to respond is when I don't have a virtual assistant on the clock, basically, where it's like, let's say 10 a.m. and I know nobody's there, then I respond to those messages.
I see. So, but you'll cover that with the next assistant. You'll have it all 3 shifts, right?
Yes, correct.
Oh wow,
correct,
that's cool.
Correct.
Yeah, I like how you did that. You broke it up, get 3, put them on 8-hour shifts. That's a 24. Now, question:
Yes.
Now, are they working 5-7 days a week?
No, so I actually have them take off. They work 5 days, 2 days off. Mexico actually works 6 days. So they're, I guess, from what this girl was telling me, she says that out there, the standard is you work 48 hours a week. So it's 6 days a week. So they only get 1 day off. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
Sunday.
Yeah. And well, no, so my days off are for one of them, like the one. So what I do is I'll basically put one in charge after a while, right? And that one takes off Monday and Tuesday. So they get Monday, so because Saturdays and Sundays are my busiest. Mondays and Tuesdays are my deadest days. Like they're the off days, basically. Like I can chill on Monday, Tuesday. But I have the backup, the one that works a different shift on Monday and Tuesday on the busy hours, which is 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. from check-in time to nighttime. And so and then they get Wednesday, Thursday off. So I always have the weekend covered no matter what.
Ooh, man, you dropping some heavy gems, dude. This is how you run a full-blown business right here. I'm loving it.
And that's how you can keep from, I mean, that's how you could only work, yourself personally work 6 hours a week or less, right? I mean, that's because you're handing it off. And by doing that, you're able to scale faster.
Yeah, man, I was stubborn. I'll tell you, it took me to get to 22 units before I said, you know what, I need to hand off the messaging. I was stubborn. I was like, I'm going to handle this all myself. I don't want to bring in the extra expense of an hourly rate on a virtual assistant. And it got to a point where like I'm having dinner and I get a message and I'm like, all right, it's time to put this off. It's time to give it to someone else. I'm done. Setting codes. I used to have an alarm on my phone at 3:50 p.m. Because so some of them aren't automated, right? Like some of them we use August locks, so that's automated. Some of them we use the Yale locks, that's automated. But some of them we use the Schlage locks that don't get automated. So you have to come in on our security system and plug it in yourself. And so I would set codes at 3:50 and I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just, not that it's time consuming. It's just a distracting thing, right? For example, like even if I'm watching a movie, alarm goes off, it's time to set off the code. It's like, it just ruined the time that you're having, whether it's out with friends, whether it's, imagine my phone goes off right now on a message and I'm on this podcast and I have to stop the podcast to respond to a water issue or something like that, right? So it took me a long time to get to the point where I'm like, all right, I need to seriously hand this off so I can be 100% automated, because everything else is automated. I don't have to deal with anything.
Here's what's cool. I did a quick math, and so let's say you're paying them roughly, on average $5 an hour, and they're working 8 hours a day, and 8 hours, and then that's $320 a week. So, and you have it 3 shifts covered, that's $960 a month. So, wait a minute, that's $960 a week, right? If you're having 3 shifts covered.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, 960 times times 4 equals 3,840. Now, is that's what our listeners have to ask themselves: is your business strong enough that you could pay for you to do absolutely nothing but try to grow your business? Is it worth it spending $3,800 a month to have have other people handle all the day-to-day for you while you try to grow it? And I think the answer clearly is yes.
Yeah, well, so I think everybody needs to assess their situation and say, right, if you have 4 units where it's going to kill your entire profit of those 4 units to have someone else do this hands off, odds are it's probably not a good idea. But when you get to a specific amount of units and you are already paying yourself your salary comfortably every single month, and you have a bunch, let's say, for example, for me, when I pay myself my salary, I still have 4, 5, 6 grand left over in terms of my profit, right? In terms of my pay. I can take that money now and use it to hire my virtual assistants full time, because I know comfortably that I'm going to make that money. I'm going to make that profit. And now I'm still going to pay myself what I'm comfortable with. And the business is 100%. I mean, I can literally sit here and like sculpt and paint and watch TV all day long with no issues, and add units. And as I add units, I plug them into the system and it's all automated. And not only that, now my profit's going higher. Every time I add a unit, I can pay myself more, all because it took me the sacrifice of these couple of units, right? So for example, like when it takes about 10 units, I don't know, on the expensive side, maybe 10 units worth of income to be 100% automated, right? I think it's 7 to 10, where you can be 100% automated without paying yourself anything. So anything over that, where you start making that profit, then it's all pocket money.
Correct. Man, yeah. And another thing to go into what Steve was saying too, when you start talking about paying people, that's why that book Profit First is so strong, because he tells you, man, if you ain't at that 300K mark, you need to be doing everything yourself, which most people be like, man, that's crazy. But he's like, think about it. You start breaking down your percentages. If you're going to pay yourself this percent, your taxes this percent, you got to get to a point to where you can start hiring people out. So yeah, definitely. Yes. I recommend that book for anybody, man. That book's a life-changing right there.
Yeah, man. I got to read it again. I haven't read it in like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I like to reread certain things over time.
Yeah. And it sounds like, man, like something like you, it sounds like you don't even need to reread it, because you it's a system. And when it's in your head, it's just like clockwork. You know what I'm saying? Straight up, man.
And I'll ask you, since you're good at bringing other people in and getting them units set up like that, have you ever thought of just management? I mean, what is the pros and cons? Arbitrage versus management. Have you ever thought of just doing management?
So to be honest with you, I never thought about it. Just because I know that I can do it myself, right? Like to me, it just makes more sense to do the work myself, plug it into my system and start pocketing over it, than having to bring an extra person in, having to deal with different books for that specific unit, add an extra system for that, all of that. And that's as much as I can speak on it, because I've never done it, but I've met a lot of people who do it. Sorry, it's my dog. who do it, right? So I've met a lot of people who do both arbitrage and management, but I think it's because they started doing management and then eventually did arbitrage. I started with arbitrage, so I don't have the system or even the knowledge in place to be able to start doing management, nor do I want to, because again, I can just do it myself. If I have the funds, I can just do it myself, plug it in, and I know I'll make more money on it. I think it's more of the headache of having to deal with books for someone else and having to do a completely separate thing with the income for someone else, that I'd rather just not do it. I don't know. That's just personal opinion, I guess.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's the ongoing argument right now, right? In all the clubhouses.
Yeah, it's funny. Yes.
Management side's losing, man. Jay be shutting them down every time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's funny. Yes.
He's a good talker. Oh man. So you mentioned Loom. I've seen some Looms. How does the Loom work? You set up like a video. You can record yourself. An instructional video, and then you send it to your VAs. That sounds pretty cool.
So they used to have a free system where it wasn't. It can be unlimited number of minutes. Now they limit you, I think, to 5 minutes. And so what it does is you can create a quick video, like for example, how to unlock doors, right? Or how to set codes. I can do it, record my screen, record my face talking as I'm doing it. So it's like basically creating a quick instructional video. Literally the moment it's done, it renders a link, and that link you can send it, and within 30 seconds, the other person can see it. So there's no uploading time, no rendering time, no having to put on a different website time. It's just that direct link. It goes to that other person, and then that other person can see the video. They watch the video, and then they know what to do immediately. And you have a video in place to train the next person. So then if that person ever gets let go, or you have to replace them, or you have to show someone else, it's literally you take that video and send it to someone else. I can tell you how many people I have a video on how to structure your listing. And every time someone needs help, it's like, yeah, sure. And I just send them the video and they're like, bro, thanks. It's like, I'm like, all it did was take me copy, paste, and send. It was nothing, right? And they're super like, I can't believe you walked through all this. And it's like a 15-minute video of like literally how to set your title, to how to set your paragraph, your body, like everything.
Another thing, that sounds awesome. We'll look into that. But another thing you mentioned early on was Jay Massey, and you mentioned also, you said, well, it's not an Airbnb business, it's an STR business, short-term rental business. So what do you mean by that, and how have you structured your business to be an STR business instead of just an Airbnb business?
Sure, that's a great question, man. So that's something I picked up from Jay. A lot of people go, oh, it's like, it used to not irritate me, but now it's like, hey, how's your Airbnb business doing? And I'm like, bro, like, I don't run an Airbnb business, because running an Airbnb business means you're only doing Airbnb bookings. And even then, Airbnb is just a marketing platform, right? It's just like doing my own, if I have my own direct website, but I had $1 billion to promote it, I'd be just as big as Airbnb. My website would be just as big, because everybody would know about my direct website. So when you run an Airbnb business, you're literally doing only Airbnb bookings, only having to deal with people with Airbnb. You're talking about opening Airbnbs, right? When you go to a landlord, hey, I want to open an Airbnb in your unit. But when you talk about short-term rentals, we're talking bookings for business travelers, corporate travelers. We're talking, I can call the local companies here, all the hospitals, and try to get contracts with them to provide short-term rentals for them. We're talking a completely different business structure, right? In terms of the way you look at it, the way it's structured, the way it's even zoned, the way people talk about it. Had I gone to my landlord that's offering me all these units and I said, hey man, I'm gonna open an Airbnb in your unit, he would have been like, no thanks. But I went to him and I said, hey, I do short-term rentals. What that means is that I house all types of people here for business, families for leisure, for Disneyland, nurses who are coming to the UCI Medical Center, insurance companies when their house has flooded. And I explained it from the short-term rental side. It was a game changer. The guy was like, oh, so it's not just Airbnb. No, man, Airbnb is just a website that I use to bring in people when I don't have a booking from my other sources. And they're like, oh. And I educated him on that. And no longer does how your Airbnbs. He goes, hey, how are your extended stays? That's what he says. That's what he calls them. I go, you mean my short-term rentals? And he just laughs. He goes, yeah, how are they doing? I go, they're doing great, man. I go, you got any more units for me? He goes, they're coming. We have this talk every day, right? So it's very distinct. People got to understand that it's very, very distinct. So, yeah.
That is awesome. That's golden right there. And also, can you find me some units in SoCal?
I can. No, yeah. So look, it's funny. I was just talking to a buddy of mine who he's also out there in Fullerton, and he called me. He goes, "Hey, bro, I need new locations." And I'm like, I can share them. Do I want to share them? I don't know if I want more people in my locations, right? Because again, it's like it floods specific areas. Man, when I got to Fullerton, I kid you guys not, it was me and maybe like in that one corner, literally just me. And then you fast forward 14 months, there was 130 within a 10-mile radius of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all people who literally just started following me. One guy went into the same building. In that same building, we had 39 short-term rentals. I mean, there's a reason why we got kicked out, right? And there are like 2 other buildings, right? Even like this, like I was telling you guys, in this Costa Mesa building, this guy that walked in and used my name, I called and tried to get more, and now they don't want to do anymore because they're stopping the corporate rentals there. And I'm like, why? Well, because there's another guy in here now. We can't give out anymore. So it comes to a fine line, I guess, because people can find out where you're at very easily. But I would only share my locations with people who I know run their business the way I run it, because I just don't want to have any problems. I don't want somebody going in there and just letting any random person into the building. It just happened. It's happened to me multiple times. It just happened at this new location. The same owner who didn't want. Listen to this story. The same owner who didn't want to do Airbnbs in his building, where I educated him, sold him on the entire business structure, was literally asking people, hey man, this is perfect for extended short-term stays. Do you want to rent the locations? And I look at him, I go, what are you doing? I go, you're putting people direct competition in the same building. He goes, well, take the whole building. I'll take the whole building. Stop offering it to other people. And in one of the other locations, he actually gave another company 7 units. And I didn't find out about it till a week later. I'm like, hey, I'm ready for the rest of the units. So they're leased. I go to this other company who's going to do what you're doing. And then he has the audacity to call me to train and teach these people to do things the way I'm doing them. I was like, oh my God. I was like, nope, figure it out, man. If they got problems, it's on you. And then, no, so I actually sat him down and his business partner, they both own the building. And I sat them down. I said, listen, I go, I've been through this before. You brought people in. There's going to, I don't want to say it's going to happen, but there will be a time where you're going to have issues with someone that doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't run the business the way that we run it. When that happens, do not pull me in to that pool of trouble. As a matter of fact, keep me 100% separate, because if you guys ever do decide to kick these people out, I want to take over their units. I don't want to be involved in it. And luckily I had that conversation because, man, sure enough, within 2 weeks of operating, people are smoking in the building, and it's 100% smoke-free building. They're allowing it. I'm watching them from the patios. I'm down there with the owners having a meeting, and it's that unit that they rented out. And there's kids out there with furniture on the patio, and they're smoking. And I'm like, I'm not calling them, man. Figure it out. That's on you. That's on you. So, you know, it depends on who you work with, who you operate with, and how you operate. That's going to keep you afloat.
Facts. Yeah. Now, have you thought about doing like a right to refusal on those?
Yeah. So, man, I wish I would have thought about that before I signed those lofts, because now I do. Now I'm thinking of doing it every time it happens. So every time somebody, like for this 8-unit building, I literally said, hey, not only am I doing a right to refusal, I'm making sure that he doesn't talk to anybody else before anytime a new building comes up. So now I'm starting to consider it in every single location that I go into.
Wow. Yeah. Because I noticed that when people start overcrowding, like you said, man, if people start getting shut down, you start getting a whole bunch of now. And also one thing you said is very important. Last question. You said you had a bunch in one building. What was the lessons learned on that?
Man. Okay. Number one, don't open so many in a giant building like that, right? Unless I control the entire, like a small unit building, like anything from 5 to 12 units, I don't want to do any more in a building with I'm not going to do 14 in a building with 150 anymore. Because if they decide to change their mind, even though we're operating good and something happens and they shut me down and I have to move, I'm going to be stuck moving all those units. And that was a big, big lesson, right? It's great in terms of scale because you can open a lot fast, but not only that, now you're in direct competition. People say there's no competition in the short-term rental game. There isn't. But when you're in the same little corner, there's definitely competition, 100%. And so, you know, one unit will outperform the other, and the other will outperform the other. And so now I'm very, very specific. Like at that loft building, I could have taken all 24, but instead I only took 9, right? That's it. That was my max. Because if they decide to change their mind, if the building sells, if a regulation comes in, anything, I don't want to be stuck having to scramble and figuring out what to do with so many units in one location.
Man, and also now, how do you handle new management coming in?
So it's funny. That's a great question, dude. That happened at that other building where I was at. 3 different management companies in the time I was there, and so each one is teaching a brand new kid what you're doing. It's just, you have to, the moment they come in, it was, hey, listen, I'm Rafael. I'm the Night and Rain Properties. I have the 15 units here. I just want to sit down and talk to you guys so you guys understand how it is exactly that we operate. I'm sure the prior management talked about us, but if they didn't, let me know when it's a good time to come in. We'll talk about it. We'll get going. And so it was sitting down with them and then walking them through every single one of my units. I made sure that they were able to see all of my locations within the building, so they understand what it is exactly that we do, what it is exactly that we bring in, who it is that we're housing, and how we operate, most importantly, exactly what we have in place to be able to manage our locations properly. And it's just teaching them all over. So it's basically just teaching that new management company exactly what you do. And man, luckily all 3 of them loved us. They absolutely loved everything about us because we kept their occupancy rate low. We handled everything professionally. We never had any issues, and we handled most of our maintenance issues ourselves anyway. So
you deal directly with owners mostly? You don't just deal with the front office?
No, I do both.
Okay.
So I just love owners mainly because they're easier to deal with. You have more control with them as opposed to a front office property manager. If that property manager, like we were just saying, if that property manager changes, now you're having to teach a whole new person the same thing. And if that new management company doesn't want you, adios, you're out the door. And so with owners, not only, I actually like to deal with investors, owner investors more than anything now, because those guys are the ones that when you have a really good relationship with them, they'll literally start offering everything. I mean, I'm not kidding you guys. Like, I have 3 buildings lined up, an 8 unit, a 9 unit, a 12 unit. Like, I don't even know if I can handle all that coming up, right? So
Give me some of those.
You know what's a great way to find them? And tell you guys really quick is contractors, bro. Contractors that do multifamily. That's gold. Not everybody talks about that, but the contractor that built that 1 9-unit building, he's building 4 other buildings for 4 other investors, and it's a simple phone call. Hey, man, what do you got? Anything new that's coming up? He goes, yeah, we're about to finish on this 12-unit building. My business partner that I told you guys, so we decided she's starting her own separate now, and so she's building up her own company, and that's how it worked. We called it the contractor, and she took over an entire I think it's like a 12-unit building, slowly taking over. She's got 7 there now, and she's slowly taking them as they go. And it was we called the contractor, said, hey, the next building for your next investor, when you're ready to go, as soon as it's ready, call me first before you call anybody else. And it was a simple, I took him out to lunch, bought him some coffee. Now we're friends. And now he just calls me every time there's a new building from any investor.
Smart move, man. That's what that's what I've been doing. Like, that's what I like in my Clubhouse bio. When I don't get on it as much, but that's all I'm looking for. Contractors, lines of credit. Yeah, I tell them straight up what I'm looking for. I need STRs. So yeah, that's a fact. That's a major plug. Major.
Yeah.
Man, I need to rewind this. I need to listen to this episode a bunch, man. This is so much, dropping so much knowledge on us. I have a really important question. In-N-Out Burger or Tommy's Burgers?
In-N-Out, bro, 100%. 100%.
You ain't down with those chili burgers?
Dude, no, you know, if I'm eating a burger, it's got to be In-N-Out, man. I don't eat them anywhere else.
Oh, man.
Can't go wrong with the double and almost all fries.
Oh man, yeah, we got them out here. It's not the same. It's not the same as the Cali In-N-Outs. I don't know what the deal is. Different water they use. I don't know. Oh man, this has been a great ep. You got some more questions, Micah?
That was it, man. This is a dope episode. I'm definitely gonna be rewinding it back. I know it's gonna get a lot of hits because, man, that how you trained a VA, that was dope, man. I love it. But yeah, man, Raf, thanks for coming on, man. Of course, I'll see you on Clubhouse. I ain't been on as much, but I'm gonna hop back in there. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on.
Cool, man. Yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I had a great time.
I know you give a bunch of advice. What advice do you get people starting out, to go ahead and take the plunge and jump into arbitraging?
All right. Everybody that I've met literally is like, they'll sit down and try to learn as much as they can. Just learn how to talk to a landlord and then go do that step. Don't worry about what comes next. That's literally it. Learn what to say, educate yourself on how to talk to them, and then just go out and find them, make the phone call, sign that first lease. Literally everything else will fall into place. Don't sit there and try to learn the entire business before you get going.
Okay. Could we do a little role playing? Act like I'm a landlord or I'm a front office, whatever. How would you approach me and pitch me?
Yeah, man. So it would be a phone call first. So it's a simple, hey, my name's Rafael. I'm with Nine Rain Properties. We're a corporate housing provider here in Southern California. We do short-term rentals for business travelers in the area. In your area, we're actually looking to expand. We've had some demand for some travel nurses coming from the hospital, UCI Medical Center, and we're hoping we can work with you guys. Do you guys allow corporate leases? That's it. That's literally it.
And do you you put everything under your LLC as corporate leases?
Yes, everything. So every single lease that I have is under my corporation.
Okay. And so I know, like, starting off, like, for example, I started off my LLC this year, right? And so it's a lot of places are saying they want to see at least 2 years, of you doing business under that LLC. How did you get started putting stuff under your LLC?
So, okay, the people that will ask you for 2 years experience are the very well-established property management companies that manage the REITs, right? Those big real estate investment trusts that have 500 unit complexes. Those guys already have a procedure and system in place to handle corporate leases. And their procedure and system is usually 2 years experience, business bank accounts, business credit. Those are the things that they'll ask you for. So anybody who wants to get started, I always tell them, look for the small complexes, the ones that are in need to get vacancy filled, right? If it's a 500 unit complex and a property manager, they don't care if you're going to take 1 or 5 units. They're already doing their marketing. That's what they do. It doesn't matter to them if they have a 5 or 6 units empty on 500 units because they know they'll get filled at some point. But if you go to a landlord or a single family operator who's got 4 or 5 units that they're losing money every month because it's like their baby or like their third, fourth investment, they're not going to care that you've been operating for 2 years. They're going to care more of how you operate, what you do, and that you have the funds to cover those expenses. That's literally it. And so if you're not going to start, if you don't have that 2-year business history or that 2-year business credit, go find those single operator investor owners that own 1 12-unit building, that own 5-6 houses in the area, and explain to them what it is that you're doing. Have your bank account with money ready so that they can see that you have the funds to cover the expenses. That's super huge. And just literally have a conversation. Don't be fake. Don't lie to them about who you're bringing in. And explain to them what you're going to do and show them that you have the funds to cover their rent. And they'll guaranteed will probably 100 out of like, I don't know, 90% of the time will be that they'll accept you.
Mm. And okay, and what if you get this question? Oh, you mean Airbnb? You're gonna come in here and do Airbnb? Oh, how do you answer that?
So that was the going back to that same owner. The first question he asked me when I walked in the door, he goes, "Look, man, I don't want any Airbnb here, right?" And so, hey, do they go, "Oh, so is it like Airbnb?" I go, "Hey, look, before we get to that, I just want to explain to you first what we do." I just stopped the question. I kind of diverted. I just want to explain to you what I do. Look, I do short-term rentals. Okay, what I do is I bring in corporate house. I provide corporate housing for business travelers who are here in the area, for nurses who need a place to stay in short-term days, anything under 30 days. I have used Airbnb in the past. Airbnb is used to fill my vacancy and my gaps in those days in the calendar where I absolutely need to get it filled, because if I'm empty, I can't pay you your rent. If I'm 100% occupied, then I pay you the rent. And so I tell them I don't have a business traveler who's coming in for the entire year. If that was the case, I just hand them over to you so you can do a 12-month lease. But they're here for a week, they're here for a month, and in between that time, when I don't have someone else coming in or a nurse who's staying or a family for Disneyland, that's when I come in and I say I have to use Airbnb for those days because I need to be occupied. But those people still get vetted the exact same way as everybody else, right? We make sure that they're good people. We understand they got to have a host referral. We got to make sure that they have a government ID. We got to make sure that the person who booked checks in. And then our security systems in the house is the second vetting, where we make sure that when they're in the apartment, there's no parties going down because of the noise decibel monitors. We make sure that there's no extra people coming in with them because of the doorbell camera. And once you explain to that and show that to them, it's like, oh, okay, I see. It's not just Airbnb. You're right. You're actually, and again, and the most important thing, let them know you're running a business. It's a professional business, not a side gig, something you're doing for fun, right? I'm going to take care of your place perfect for the next 10 years. It's going to be in perfect shape 10 years from now, right? Because I'm going to get it cleaned 30 times a month, right? And so in 5 years, the property is going to look just as good as it looks today. You're not going to have to bring in someone in 12 months to repair the wall because there's a hole in it, because I'm going to make sure that wall's been taken care of while I'm operating there. And once you explain that, it's like, yeah, how many keys do you want? No joke.
That's awesome.
Keep that maintained property. That's always the, you know what I'm saying? Them apartment complexes, they hate going in there after 12 months, somebody long-term that stayed, destroyed the place. You know, that's a huge one, man.
Yep.
Yeah, so stay on after we end this after we end the video, man. I ask you some things about, getting some places from you.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Definitely.
All right. Well, this is a great episode. Micah, what do you think?
Yeah, great episode, man. Definitely check us out at liveletthrive@gmail.com. Follow us. Email us at liveletthrive@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram. And yeah, thank y'all for continuing to listen. And we are out.
Later.
Peace.
See you again.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Live, Let, Thrive. Be sure to tune in next week for all the latest in the world of Airbnb and all that entails. Bye-bye.